Hey, hello, and welcome to the Parsha class. Parsha Noach 5784. Learning Torah together should be a zchut, a merit for us and all of Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, in this time, especially this difficult time. We should only see good things come of it. Actually, just give me one moment. I seem to be missing a book here. Okay, less than a moment. Hashem. And so Parsha Noach. Quick summary of the Parsha. I think it's a very well-known story. There is a terrible world out there for some reason. A lot of anger and hatred and thievery. And Hashem decides that the world needs to be destroyed. He decides to save a particular person by the name of Noach and his family. And we will be discussing that quite extensively today, God willing. And the Noach and his family and groups of animals are gathered together in what's a teva, which is translated as an ark, and sort of like a submarine of sorts. And there's waters from above, there's waters from below, and together the animals, Noach and his family survives, comes into a brand new world, and there his sons split up and create different civilizations, which eventually gather together again later, at the end of the Parsha, to build a migdal, to create a tower, to fight Hashem, to join Hashem, whatever it is that they were trying to do, to definitely contravene the desires of Hashem somehow. And so Hashem decides, instead of destroying the world this time, Hashem is going to mess up their languages and have them basically split themselves up with their different cultures and different languages into various groups, as we see eventually happens. Obviously, there's a lot more details in the Parsha, and that's what we're going to be discussing in our deep dive in just a moment. Where is it? Here. Good. All right, Baruch Hashem. Here's the source sheet for this week's Parsha class that I've shared with you. And feel free to get that from Safaria. I thought it would be worthwhile, even though we discussed this pasuk, this verse last week, and it's not even this week's Parsha, it's the last verse in last week's Parsha. It's important to know how this all fits in with this week's Parsha. So, for example, here we go, chapter 6, verse 8 says, "V'Noach matza chen b'nei Hashem." Hashem wanted to destroy the world, but Noach found favor in Hashem's eyes. We discussed that last week, as I said, through the perspective of the Orach Chaim. And this week's Parsha begins, Eile toldot Noach. These are the generations of Noach. Noach ish tzadik tamim. Noach was a man who was righteous and pure, hayya b'toratav, in his generation. Et Elokim ithalech Noach, and Hashem walked with Hashem. Hashem walked with him, and that's how the first verse ends. And there's going to be quite a bit to say about all this, but I think we should start with a very famous idea that really, there are books written on this topic, and there's a lot to say, and we're gonna say quite a bit today, but it's by no means is an exhausted topic. There's beautiful lessons to be learned. I should say there's always cute little tidbits that can be found in the Torah, little lessons here and there, little hints to things that are going on in the world, gematrias, words that might sound similar to different other words, the Torah words, Arabic words, whatever it is. And it's important to remember that although that's cute, that's just a diversion. That's just a distraction from what the Torah really has. And we're going to see today that the Torah is filled, chock full of lessons and direction. That's what Torah means. It gives us direction how to live our lives, how to deal with, how to think about events in the world. And the Torah is all about that. We might be going through dark and difficult times, true, but nowhere near as difficult and dark as the world that Noach lived through. And if we could do what Noach did, if we can survive the way Noach survived, we're okay. Let's see how it is, what went through and how he was able to survive, why he was worthy of all of these things. So in this verse we just quoted, it seems like Noach is a great man. He's righteous, he's tamim, he's pure, whatever that means. Sefaria translates it as blameless, whatever it is, and he's in his generation. But that kind of seems strange that it mentions that he's in his generation. Well, what other generation would he be in? He's not in our generation. He lived in his time as we live in ours. So what is the lesson being taught here by the Torah? What's the allusion? And Rashi tells us the allusion is to an important argument, a machloket that is very far-reaching and has a lot of very important ideas in it. It says, Yesh min rabbeinu dorshim oto l'shavach. There's those rabbis who've explained this verse to be in praise of Noach. In other words, kol shekain ilu haya bedor tzadikim haya tzadik yoter. He was righteous in his generation. Imagine what kind of righteousness he'd be in a better generation, where there are better people, better influences, more Torah classes available, more shiurim, more books, more better things to look at when you look outside, etc. Imagine how much more righteous he'd be then. So if he was righteous in his generation, al achat kama v'kama, how much more so he'd be righteous in future or other generations. Then come along other rabbis, v'yesh dorshim oto l'gnai. And some rabbis see this very positive seeming verse as a critique of Noach. So, Lefidoro hayat tzadik, according to his generation, by those standards, at the base level, Noach was good. He was a tzaddik compared to everybody else. But if he would have lived in the generation of Abraham, lo haya nechshav l'klum, and he wouldn't be anything. He wouldn't have counted. He wouldn't have counted for anything. He would have been a nobody. Seems very strange. It seems like very critical, very hypercritical of Noach, and it does not seem just leaving Rashi alone. It would not seem to be teaching us any important lessons. But of course, we're not supposed to leave Rashi alone. Rashi isn't supposed to be learned in a bubble. You're supposed to ask questions. You're supposed to look up his source in Sanhedrin Kuf Chet 108, and you're supposed to ask questions. That's how we learn. So amongst the many commentaries who ask questions on this, we're going to start with Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. Yaakov Kamenetsky and Emet Liakov, he brings this up. Right? He quotes the Rashi, Ad Kan Lashona, Miporashev Tamu, Al Lashon Rashi. There's the rabbis who wonder, aghast at Rashi's language. Shehitchil. One moment, I already made a bracha, by the way. Shehitchil Bedor Shal Tzadikim, Messiah Bedoro Shal Avram. They start with a generation of tzaddikim, and they end with a generation of Avram Avinu. Va'ayin Mefarshim Masha Katuv B'zeh. Look at what the rabbis over there say. Different Mefarshim. He quotes their Ayin B'Gurarye. Okay, so Masha Katuv B'zeh. V'nirali Kipshuto. It seems to me that, simply put, the emet ein kan pluta ad kama higia tzidko shel Noach. Really, when they're not arguing about how righteous he was, The Kule Alma Modim Sheilu Haya Bedoram Shel Tzadikim Bavada Haya Tzadik Yoter. If you would have lived in a better generation, you would have been a greater tzaddik. Ilu Haya Bedoram Shel Avraham. If you would have lived in the generation of Avraham Avinu, Shei Bnei Hador Kulam Rishayim. In Avraham's generation, where almost everybody except for Avram and the people that he converted were basically evil. V'az lo hayu nisharim rak Avram v'Noach, and if all you were left with was Avraham and Noach, divided lo haya nikshav keneged Avram. So he wouldn't be compared to Avraham. Okay, he wouldn't be so great. Ela de plugta he b'kavanat haTorah shekatava b'dorotav. Really, the argument is all about what it means that the Torah stresses that he was righteous b'dorotav, in his generation. Ha'im kivna l'sefer shvacho or l'gnata. So l'gnavato. So whether we're trying to figure out his righteousness, or whether this is a plus or a minus, a debit or a credit, or however you want to put it, for Noach in regard to his existence in his generation. Ella sheyesh temua lama lahem lidrosh l'gnai ba b'sh'ah she'efshar l'drosh l'shvach. How could somebody at the same time be judging him negatively and positively? Tzarach loma mishum d'lo haya yachol l'hatzil et b'nei doro. The end result is he was not able to save the people of his generation. If he would have been a real tzaddik gamor, a complete tzaddik, he would have saved this entire generation. The note here is for 3. Yeah. Let's keep going. So I thought it was a different footnote. I'm sorry. Biur hadvarim, and this is the explanation for this for these words. The hine matzinu midrash. We find in the midrash shaya muchiach et bnei hador dero lomar lahem. He would try to, strengthen the people of his generation by telling them, Reka matam menichim mi shekulo shovar arazim mishtachvim le'etz yavesh ad kan lashona. He would say, why are you guys, you empty-headed ones, why are you bowing down to nothingness instead of the creator of all these things? Why are you, bowing down to cedars when you could be bowing down to the creator of cedars, right? So what are you doing? Why are you worshiping this avodah zarah? And of course, there was rampant avodah zarah at his time. So what's he doing wrong? Aval lo yada Noach. It says Rabbi Yaakov. Noach didn't know. They knew that avodah zarah, worshiping stones and trees and stuff, there's nothing to it. It's there's no mamash. There's no there. There's no point in it. That's not why they were worshiping these things. Like most people who worship all kinds of avodah zarah, or say they don't believe in God and things like that, they're not really thinking about God or the gods or anything like that. So he didn't know that. What he didn't know is Elisha Avra avodah zarah rak biglal shehid avu but le'arayot. The only reason they were really worshiping this avodah zarah is because that was their excuse to be allowed to do what they really wanted to do. In their case, different kind of arayot, different kinds of sins, sexual immorality, etc. Once you pick a religion that allows you to do A, B, and C, so now you can do really A, B, and C. In other words, you wanted to do A, B, and C, but you didn't really care about the religion. So you chose a faith. You chose a philosophy. You chose an idea to hang your hat on, and that allows you now to do whatever it is you want to do. And Noach is talking to them about avodah zarah, when avodah zarah isn't really what they care about. They don't care where they're hanging their hat. They just want to hang their hat, right? They want to do the thing they want to do. They want to do the sins they want to do, and they don't care how. And what's Noach attacking them on? On a very superficial level of the Avodah Zarah that they don't care about. This, by the way, is not in any way a pagam, a lowering of the standard of his righteousness. He is just as righteous as he would have been if he would have caught on to why they're really doing what they're doing. What is this instead? The ilohaya mevakesh et ha'emet lamito haya. Sorry, no. So ein zepagam letzidkut ela b'chachma. What the Torah hasn't really talked much about is Noach's chachma, Noach's wisdom. Yes, he's righteous. Yes, he's telling the people to stop doing the wrong things. Yes, he's telling them there's a flood coming, but they're not listening to him. Why? Because he's not talking about what they're really thinking about, what they really care about. If he would have talked about the arayot, the sins that they really want to do, and tell them how wrong they are, then they would have changed. Then they wouldn't be doing the avodah zarah that they're doing as their excuse to do the arayot. But as long as he's got the wrong idea of what they're doing wrong, his wisdom is what's lacking. He's wrong in what he's talking to them about, not in his righteousness that he's completely pure on. And the ilu haya mevakesh et ha'emet la'amito haya motze shetzarich v'hachichem bedavar arayot v'lo bedavar avodah zarah. He should be talking to them about arayot, about the sensual pleasures that they shouldn't be partaking in, instead of the avodah zarah that they're doing as an excuse to do those things. Ki zehu hayisod ba'avodat Hashem. That is the foundation of listening to Hashem. La'amod al hanekuda hamir kazit l'sum kol me'enav ba. So to really focus on what the actual point is, what the focus should be, and then to rely all your arguments on that, not on something else, not on the outside, the peripherals, but on what is the actual essence of why are they doing what they're doing, to really focus, to realize why they're doing it, and then to argue on that. And that takes a certain degree of chachma, and that's it's one of the hardest things in life, is to critique somebody. We've spoken about this in other contexts. The Gemara itself says that there's nobody alive anymore who knows how to critique. And that might be true on a level of there's nobody who can critique everybody. But the most important thing about critiquing is knowing what a person's problem is, knowing why a person is doing what they're doing, and to then speak to that. And that requires a great knowledge and love for another person, to know why they're doing what they're doing. Why is this child, take a child, for example, right? It's the easiest example that's probably non-offensive to most people. You see a child having a temper tantrum, and you think, maybe this child is evil. Maybe this child wants attention. Maybe this child, is trying to figure out what the problem is. It could be the child is tired. It could be the child is hungry. Figure out what the actual essence of the problem is. Fix that. That will fix the temper tantrum. Don't spend all your time fighting the temper tantrum. That's just an outside cover for what's really going on internally inside the child. And the same goes for, and I'm using, as I said, I'm using the child as a least offensive example, but the truth is that this is true for everybody. And anytime you see somebody doing the wrong thing, it might be that the thing they're doing is wrong. It probably is, but why they're doing it might not have anything to do with that wrong thing, that wrong behavior, that wrong practice, that whatever it is. Okay, so that's how we're going to start. it happens to be that in that third footnote that I mentioned, he the second footnote that I didn't mention, he quotes the Sefer Tama Dekra, that's Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzadok Levracha, and the Rav Chaim quotes his uncle, the Chazon Ish. So I thought it would be worthwhile to look at that as well. And he asks a similar question: why is it that we fault some rabbis seem to fault Noach for his actions, seemingly critiquing him for not being on the same level as if he would have been in the generation of Avraham, as we quoted from Rashi. So he's going to quote Rashi as well. Yesh tzaddik, etc. He pairs Rashi. Yesh omrim l'shvach. Yesh omrim l'gnai. Some say that this is in praise of him. Some say this is a critique of him. If he would have been in the time of Avram, he wouldn't have been anything. V'yesh lomar de lo pligi. And you could say, and again, he's quoting from his uncle, the Chazon Ish, they're not really arguing here. The bavadai ha'adam mushpa harbe misi vuvotav l'chein noach shaya misovev v'rishayim. We have to be cognizant of the fact that we are influenced by our environment, by those people around us. We could be great people, but if we're surrounded by not such great people, that's going to affect us. Your neighbors affect you. Whatever's around, whatever's circulating in the ether of your environment is going to have an effect on you, whether you like it or not, whether you're wearing your blinders or not. Even if you have your head down looking at the pavement, you will find things even on the pavement that you shouldn't see. Right? Like Holden Caulfield. All right, but so he's influenced by the Rishayim, by the evil people around him. And if he would have been around in the time of Avraham, he would have been influenced by, well, amongst other things, he would have been influenced by Avraham as well. Asher yatzadik negdam aval ilu haya b'masav ilu b'mei Avraham lo haya nechshav l'klum. So in his generation, he was considered great because of the influence of the people around him. Wouldn't have been so great, but but if it would have been influenced by Avraham, that would put him on a completely different level. If he would have lived in the time of Avraham, he would have been a much greater tzaddik. Why? Given shaya misivivot tzaddik, he would have been in the company of this righteous Avraham. By the way, their lives did interlap for about 48 years or so, if you do the math there. V'zehu k'mashikatuv ilu haya b'mei Avram k'mashikatuv shaya tzaddik nimtza d'lo plige mitziut rak b'kavanat hapasuk ma rutzaroma deretav aval shnehem emet. So both things, both ideas, that it's in praise of him and in critique of him, that the Torah mentions that he was a tzaddik in his generation, because there's a plus and a minus to being all alone in a generation where you're this righteous. The plus is, of course, that your own elevation in comparison to everybody else would be greater. But on the other hand, you are influenced by the people around you, and that keeps you down. An important lesson for all of us, I think. And then again, he says this is in the B'Shem Maran Chazon Ish Zecher Tzadok Levracha. This is in the name of my teacher, the Chazon Ish. All right. A similar question, a similar point, I should say, as well, is made by the Ravelvel Soloveitchik, the Brisker Rav, usually known as Hagriz, the This is an acronym for his name. And the question he asks is similar to what we've been saying. Last week's parsha told us that he was that he found chen, whatever that means, in Hashem's eyes. And then here he's called a tzaddik and a tamim. Yesh lahavin mahu tzaddik umahu tamim. We need to distinguish what does it mean to be a tzaddik and what does it mean to be pure, as if they're two different things, two different adjectives. The Torah isn't being repetitive here. It's trying to tell us something. And it says, it's here, it says, Noach, Gibor, Zakai, Shalem, Have, I can't read that word, Bidruhi, Beit Yosef, Noach, Gibor, Zakai, so he was a worthy person, Shalem, he was complete, Ovdin, Tavin, Haya, B'drava. Nira. So he explains Nir lebe'er al pi mashakatuv Rambam per Gimel Mitshuva Hilchot Perak Aleph so Perak Aleph in the first chapter 1 to 2, it says each and every person called echad ve'echad b'bnei adam yesh lo zchuyot v'avonot. Every person has merits and sins. We're not all perfect. We know that. Mi shechiyutav yeterot al avonotav. Somebody whose good deeds are greater than his or her evil deeds. It's considered tzaddik or tzedeket. Mi shavonotav Yetirot al Zchiyotav Rasha, and the other way around, when somebody has more bad qualities than good qualities, that person's considered, again, in Hashem's court, is considered a Rasha. Machza l'machza, somebody who's half and half, equal on the good and the bad. They go to shul, they keep kosher, whatever else are there, but they cheat in business or whatever, whatever the case may be. So that person is called a Beinoni. That person's called an in-between, assuming that it's all equal reward for all of these sins and rewards. And these mitzvot and averot are not equal, and they're not equal for every person, right? Depending on the person and how difficult a particular mitzvah or an avera is. And if a person is mishtadel to do the mitzvah anyway, right, just puts in all of their kochot, all of their efforts to do the mitzvah anyway, they get a greater reward than for somebody for whom the mitzvah is very easy. The easiest example of that, of course, is tzedakah, right? There's people who love giving tzedakah. They don't care if they have money or if they're in debt, they'll give tzedakah anyway. So for those people, the mitzvah of tzedakah is it's a mitzvah, but the reward probably not as great as for somebody who has to has a clenched fist, has to pry the money out of their own hand to give tzedakah and force a smile in their face. So that kind of who feels like they worked hard for their money and it's theirs and they're giving it reluctantly, but they give it anyway with a smile, and that kind of a person probably gets a bigger reward for that mitzvah, the fum tara agra. So, and Hashem has this cheshbon, not me, not anybody else, unless they know you very well, perhaps, or they can give you tochacha about this, like we said earlier from Noach. So why are we bringing this up? V'chein haMedina. The same too is true for a world, for the country. If the majority of people in a country are good, so that country can survive. The majority of people in the country are bad, that country will not survive. And if there's an equal amount between this one and that one, they're considered Beinoni. In other words, by the way, as one of my friends, Rabbi Yeshua Bloom, pointed out a few times, this is a great proof for the fact that Judaism believes that most people are good. Because if they weren't mostly good, then the world would have been destroyed a long time ago, according to this Rambam. The fact that we're still around today, that means that we're mostly considered good. Okay. Continues the Grizz. V'hine b'medina o ha'olam shavonatehem merubim zchutehem shehem nishchatin miyad. Right? If they were mostly if the country was mostly evil, they would have been destroyed immediately. Hare gam hatzadik she'enu gamur shchiotav merubim al avonatechem gam kein nishchad imahem. So a righteous person, but who's not completely a tzaddik gamur, he's not completely righteous. He has some faults. He might give tzedakah, and he might go to shul. He might wear tefillin, but he cuts off people in traffic, or whatever. He's not a perfect tzaddik, whatever your definition of not a perfect tzaddik is. All right. So for him, he'd be included in the destruction of that country, of that world. Gamke nishchad imahem. He would also be destroyed with them. Shemiyot avonotav mitztarev levivui avonot ha'olam. So because his minority of sins, which is what made him a tzaddik, connects with that majority of sins of that world. There's a whole lot of averot now against a very few amount of mitzvot. Therefore, nidon im haolam kulo. Therefore, he is included with the rest of the world. Sorry. Not important. Okay. As opposed to a very completely righteous person, she'ein lo avonot klal. A very righteous person has no sins at all. He's not judged with the rest of the world. He doesn't have any sins. He does nothing to connect the two. The sins of the world and his not sins don't connect. So he's not in that group. So he'll be spared in this bubble. Zehu shekatuv hatargum zakai shalom. That's why the Targum says about Noach that he's worthy and he's complete. Hine ma shemitargumin tzaddik zakai. It translates tzaddik as worthy. Pirsh Ramban shehu zakai bedino. He's worthy in judgment. The hainish yesh lo rov zchuyot alavona, which means he has more merits than sins. Ach yiksha the imkain hayatzarech lidon bedin haolam v'yamot. And if so, then the whole world, then if for any other way, zakativ tamim, so then he would have been included in the world's punishment. That's why the pasuk also needs to tell you that he's tamim. Which means he's complete. The Hainu Tzaddik Gamor. He was not just tzaddik; he was a complete tzaddik. He had no sins, and since he had no sins, lefichach lo nidon im haolam nitzal. He was not judged along with the world to be destroyed. Regardless of all that, we still need to try to understand, though. So, if he's completely righteous, he doesn't deserve the punishment of the rest of the world, then we have to explain why it says in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Kuf Chet, which is the source of Rashi's comment that he was judged both positively and negatively. Lo mashma kain d'tana. So it says, Af al Noach nichtach gzar din. So there's a judgment on Noach as well. And that's why that first verse that we read today, the last verse of last week's Parsha, tells us really Noach did deserve to die, but he found chen, he had found favor in the eyes of Hashem. Muchach, shagam Noach be'etzem nichlal b'din rov ha'olam lemita. Really, he deserved to be judged with the rest of the world and die. He found favor in Hashem's eyes, which allowed him to get beyond the letter of the law. So this would need to be explained. This doesn't fit very nicely. In other words, Rav Belville is saying this doesn't fit very nicely with what he's said so far. So that being said, this would be a good time to bring up a seforno, which again, on the last verse of last week's parsha, where it says Noach found favor in the eyes of Hashem. What does this mean? Lahatzil gam banav u'benotav. That he found favor doesn't mean that he was going to be saved. He would have been saved anyway because of the tzaddik and tamim aspect that we've already discussed. What the fact that he found chen means is not only was he spared, but even people who didn't completely deserve it, including his sons and his wife and his sons' wives, all of them were spared because of this chen. That's what the chen means. Because lo mipnei hashaya ru'i lakach, they wouldn't have been really worthy of being spared on their own. Aval al tzad chanina zaku. So that it was only because of this grace of Hashem that they Hakel Yitbarach. That's why he was able to survive, along with his future descendants. But that being said, that fits very nicely with something that the Ketav Sofer writes. Ketav Sofer, the son of the Chatam Sofer, one of the sons, says in his commentary, and we're actually going to see two different things about this in the verse in our commentary here today. That's the first verse in this week's parsha. Again, still, right? We haven't gotten past that yet today. And it says later on, he was a great tzaddik in that generation. Nearly Levarik, it seems to me that it should be explained. Hashem saw the world that it deserved to be destroyed. Why did the world deserve to be destroyed? He should call basar at darko al haaretz. The world was people destroyed their ways on the world. This is chapter 6, verse 11. Why was the world punished? And Rashi gives an answer in Bereshit having to do with the trees not listening, the world not listening when it created the trees. That's a whole difficult Rashi to explain. We'll have to hopefully revisit that someday. And that's what he's quoting here, Pirush Rashi Yedua. Everybody knows this Rashi. That's the Rashi I just paraphrased. Gam tzarech lechavin al haaretz mahi. V'nirali liyashiv hakol. And there's one way to explain all of this. The hine b'midrash sof bereshit. The midrash at the end of sof bereshit, it says, so again, on al hapar pasuk ki nichamti ki ashitem Noach matzachein. Hashem regretted creating the world, and then Noach found grace. Midrash nechamti ki ashitem. What it means that Hashem regretted im Noach matzachein. In other words, tzarich lehavin im matzachein im al kain lama nichem hakadosh baruch hu olav. Why is it that if he decided to destroy the world and that Noach had chen, why did Hashem want to destroy the world with Noach, it seems? Venerally. And he says, Hine Noach hamtzi kli machrisha. The Midrash tells us that Noach was called Noach because he was able to hold. He was the first who was able to hold tools and create things and make life easier for people. That's why he was considered to have given people comfort. Ayn Ramban, Ki al Ti, the Karo, Kain Ayn Sham Ibn Ezra. So he quotes other sources. Omar, Ki ad shelo haya lahem kli machrisha, until that they had this tool that made life easier for them. Lo haya biyadam shum p'ula lohoil lohutzi ha'adama. They had no way to really work the land properly. Rak ma shetzamach ha'aretz v'tavo. So they could only count on the land sprouting whatever it wanted to according to its nature. V'lo hayu shochachem Hashem, v'lo hayu omrim Elokim l'maseh edehem. Elokeinu l'maseh edehem. And then Hashem, only whatever Hashem would give them. Ki hayu tamid bal korcham einehem libam al Hashem ma yitein va'aretz hotzi kutz v'darda. They were forced. They were compelled to trust completely in Hashem, be very religious, and trust completely in Hashem. Hashem will give them whatever He gives them. They had no way to work the land. They weren't able to hold tools. But afterwards, Noach Kli Machrisha. Once Noach was able to hold plowing tools, right, digging tools, התחילו לפועל פועלת לעזור לטבע ותוציא בקל פירותיה והיו שוכחים בהשם כי הוא המשגיח על העולם. Once they were able to work the land themselves, thanks to Noach, they could now potentially take Hashem out of the picture. And that's exactly what they did. That's exactly what some people, unfortunately, still do today. Once you think that kochi b'yatsa yadi, that everything's in your hand and in your strength, then you can more or less, chas v'shalom, you can think that Hashem is not involved. You think you're doing it. That's what they started to do after Noach was born. So yes, be'emet ki Noach hayat tzaddik. Yeah, Noach was a tzaddik. And yeah, he helped people. Yeah, this convenience, this tool of convenience made life easier for people. Aval hu b'chachmatu mitzib kli machisha garam ki shechacho hador hahu b'parku b'Hashem. It's this wisdom of his that was supposed to help people, make life easier for people, like Nobel with the dynamite, right? It was supposed to create peace. It was supposed to make life easier for people. People take these tools and they use their yetzer hara to then make life, instead of easier for them, actually more difficult by taking Hashem out of the picture. And that's why, according to this Ktav Sofer, another reason why it has to emphasize the fact that Noach had chen, because he was indeed a tzaddik, but his own tzidkut, his own chen would eventually lead to at least part of the downfall of the people. That verse, by the way, v'tishachet haaretz lefnei ha'elokim v'timalei haaretz chamas, the world became corrupt, and the world was filled with lawlessness and the thievery, etc. So the Ktav Sofer, same commentary. There's so many commentaries on this idea of how righteous, or this question of how righteous Noach was, that the Ktav Sofer himself has several different commentaries. We're just going to quote two. Here's the second one. Then we'll conclude with some muster from Rav Wolbe from Ali Shor. So this is an interesting and very important idea. I just want to mention it as an aside in a way. That nearly the midrash and Noach lavon al shelo haya mukiach anshe doro. So regarding whether Noach was able to fix the people, change them, right, to critique them, as Rav Yaakov said, in a way that's going to change them into better people. Nearly shigaram lo mipnei shayu lo eina pkicha al banav shelo yamdu anshe Russia. You think Noach wasn't so good because he didn't change the people? His sons didn't go after the people. His sons went after him. And that's a victory. Maybe he wasn't able to influence the rest of the generation, but he was able to allow humanity to survive by influencing his own descendants, his own offspring. It's not an easy thing to do in that kind of generation. And that in and of itself is an important lesson for all of us, because we have the idea sometimes, I'm going to focus on Kiruv, I'm going to bring other people closer to Judaism. Don't do anything that's going to potentially harm your own children from going in the right path. You have to be careful about what influences you bring home, what influences your children see, because your children also need to continue. And that's going to be your level of success. Really, it's also to be found in your own children, your own home. And he says more about that, and I invite you to look at the source sheet for that. Okay, let's get out of the beginning of the parsha. Let's fast forward to the end of the parsha. The building of the Tower of Babel. It says, regarding that, Hashem lirot et ha'ir, Hashem came down to see the city that they built, the Shinar, etc. And there's a lot to say about what does it mean Hashem went down. Maybe, God willing, in future classes we can speak about that a little more. But he saw the city at the Migdal, the building that they were making, Asher banu b'nei Adam, that they were being built by the b'nei ha'adam, by the sons of the man. Sons of the man. All right, so again, the Sefaria translates it as humanity, but it's a very strange phrase, b'nei ha'adam, and Rashi is already cued in on this. It says b'nei ha'adam, ella b'nei mi, it's the sons of man as opposed to like sons of giraffes. Of course, man. So Shema b'nei chamorim gemali, maybe they're the sons of donkeys, of camels. Ela b'nei Adam Harishon. Obviously, they're the sons of Adam Harishon. They're all the descendants of the first man. Otherwise, at the Torah, Amar Ha'isha Asher Natata Imadi Av Ela Kapu Batova Limrod Lemi Shehi Piam Tova. Umiltam min hamabu. These are the same people. Not only are they the genetic descendants of man, they are the ethical descendants of man. Just as man, the first man, ignored the goodness that Hashem created by giving him a wife, and then blamed the eating of the fruit on the wife. These people also don't have that hakarat hatov, that gratitude that they should have for the gift that they've been given of life itself, and they're turning that life upside down to whatever, fight against Hashem, whatever it is that they're trying to do, survive a future flood, whatever it is that they think they're going to do with their own efforts. This is not the gratefulness that they should be exhibiting. So the Ali Shor quotes this in his in volume 2, in his chapter on the gratitude in the second Vad. He writes about this, and he says that there's two reasons why people sometimes are not grateful. The first is that people feel entitled to what they have. You have it, so obviously you deserve it. I was born with this privilege. I was born with this silver spoon. I was born with this car, whatever it is you think you're born with. So that's the first thing. And that attitude is very hard to break out of. that's from your first day you have that. And besides this, Adam nolad ba'anuchiot b'sivo lirot et atzmo omed b'mirkas ha'olam kulo. So, and then the second reason why it's sometimes hard to feel gratitude is that we don't want to feel like we owe anybody anything. We don't want to be beholden to anybody. We don't want to feel indebted. So those two things play in very powerfully in how we behave. On the one hand, we don't want to have gratitude because we feel like we are entitled to something. And the second reason is because we don't want to say thank you. We don't want to feel like somebody's giving us something we don't deserve. So again, it's a vad. So he says quite a bit in his vadim in Elu Shor. The Rav Shlomo Wolbe, that's my Rebbe's Rebbe. He writes quite a bit about how to fix these kinds of character traits that are really traps, or these mental traps that we've set for ourselves. And again, they're very hard to break through. And he writes these vadim, if you go through them one at a time, week after week, you can. These are ways that people can work in groups to try to break through their different character traits. But it's this is a very important one. Or try to think, go through your life, and take, if you must, take small steps, and try to find ways to be worthy of the gifts that you've been given in this world. We've all been given all kinds of things that we don't deserve. We're not. Oops, where are we? There we go. We're imperfect, and we've been given lots of gifts by Hashem. We've been given life. We've been given certain privileges. We've been given certain safety and all the main things that humanity needs for survival and happiness. And we should think of that's one of the reasons, for example, for tefillah, for the Shemona Esrei and the Modim. It gives lots of examples of things that we should be thankful for. At least 3 times a day, we should think about, oh, Hashem gave me this and He gave me that, and I'm so grateful that life is going along those paths. And we should, with gratitude, we should continue. And with the more gratitude that we show Hashem, the more He should shower us with more blessings, life, and happiness. We should have a great rest of your week. And let's continue again next week. Take care.